Everyone's able to see that?
Not that I'm locked up, not that everybody's locked up, that you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution. Right. You might run a liberator like Harris Cleave out the country, but you can't run liberation out the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting. And if you do, you'll come up with answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain. You come up with conclusions that don't conclude. And you come up with people that you thought should be acting like pigs, just acting like people and moving on pigs. And that's what we've got to do. So we're going to see about Bobby, regardless of what these people think we should do. Because school is not important and work is not important. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
But the state's attorney and the state's attorney's office has reasons to see Fred Hampton in jail. We've got a new state's attorney, you see. And he said already what he thought about people that had different political beliefs than he has. His speeches sound somewhat like those of Hitler, and we know why he wants to see Fred Hampton put in jail. Why do I have a lot of arrests? Because of harassment. Why is that harassment? Because the people that harass me have set up a problem that made me disagree with them violently, and they set up this problem in order to exploit me and other people like me. And why they want to get rid of me? Because I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people, and if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of us. And it's just, it's sort of like a primary thing with me. I'm the first move that they'll make. I'm a part of the organization. It will be the first organization they'll move on, because I happen to be a part of the organization, the Black Panther Party, that is the only organization, in fact, that has came out and stood up loud and clear and said that we don't care what anybody says, whether they have guns or not, and badges or 18 uniforms. If whenever they step outside the bounds of legality into the bounds of illegality, then we'll blow their brains out if they're bothering the people. And what makes them mad about that? They're constantly bothering the people. Anybody that's out there for the protection of the people happens to be in direct conflict with them. What makes them mad about it? What makes them mad about it is that they have black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents. They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best, we think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution. Right on. Right on.
At Santa Barbara City College, your future begins with a view, opportunity, and
Revolution. Right on. Right on. And that's saying all power to the people. Right on. That's saying that no matter what color you are, there's only two classes. And that's saying that there's a class over here and there's a class over there. And the reason that this class over here has never did anything to get this class off its back, because this is lower, this is upper. This is the oppressed, this is the oppressor. This is the exploited, this is the exploiter. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fight amongst each other. And you've heard the testimony of pigs here. You got pigs of all colors, you know that. You got pigs that are white, you got pigs that are black, you even got pigs that are black and white. Propagating the same type of madness that this buffoon Hanrahan would be propagating if he were here himself. And why? Because they want to keep you to believing that I'm your enemy, and that everybody else that's black and that wears a lot of hair on his head and hair on his face, they want to keep you thinking that he's your enemy. Why? Because if ever you would disregard him and overlook him just for a minute and throw away that question of racism and started to dealing with a little logic, then there would be no one else you could attack other than Hanrahan, other than Daley, and other than Tricky Dicky Nixon.
Like we always said, if you ask to make a commitment at the age of 20, and you say, I don't want to make that commitment, only because of the simple reason that I'm too young to die, I want to live a little bit longer, what you did already.
You have to understand that people have to pay the price for peace. If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not to struggle, then goddamn it, you don't deserve to win. Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it. Let me say it in the spirit of liberation. I've been gone for a little while. At least my body's been gone. You ain't got to repeat after me. At least my body's been gone for a little while. But I'm back now, and I believe that I'm back to stay. I believe that I'm going to do my job, and I believe that I was born not to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die from slipping on a piece of ice. I don't believe I'm going to die because I got a bad heart. I don't believe I'm going to die because of lung cancer. I believe that I'm going to be able to die what I was in the thing that I was born for. I believe that I'm going to be able to die high off the people. I believe that I will be able to die as a revolutionary in the international revolutionary proletariat struggle. And I hope that each one of you will be able to die in the international proletariat revolutionary struggle, even be able to live in it. And I think that struggle is going to come. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?
May he rest eternally in revolutionary peace and in revolutionary power. Um, may he be accepted as a martyr, sacrificed on the altar of the false idols of white supremacy and capitalism. And may we honor the sacrifices of all of our martyrs in the recent past, in the distant past, all of those who have shed tears and who have shed sweat and who have shed blood in order to forward the cause of liberation, in order to lift humanity out of this miserable state in which it has found itself for far too long. And may we be increased in revolutionary love for one another. May everyone, sorry, I'm going straight into preacher mode, but may everybody who is gathered together on this call find their hearts strengthened in solidarity and love and resolve, so that we can take the steps that are necessary to take in our time to make sure that the suffering and the sacrifice and indeed the martyrdom of people like Fred Hampton and Mark Clark and El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and countless others named and unnamed, that those sacrifices are not in vain. Amen. So begin today with a few content items that we'll need to get through. But I wanted you guys to hear directly from Chairman Fred. I know a lot of people didn't do the reading part of the homework assignment, but I'm sure, raise your hand if you watched Judas and the Black Messiah either for the first time or again. Excellent. So whenever I have a classroom environment, even one like this where we had over 180 people on the call yesterday, 120 now, I like to try to make these interactive environments. What were your guys' biggest takeaways from watching the cinematic representation that came across in Judas and the Black Messiah? Somebody said second time watching it. Others were watching it for the first time. Go ahead, Angela. You have something to add? Oh, I saw a hand up, so I was making a call. Listen, go ahead.
This may not be the answer that you're looking for.
I'm not looking for any particular answer,
Okay.
so that
uh, Enraged is fully enraged. I mean, I live in a constant state of rage, but I was born in San Francisco. I didn't grow up in San Francisco, but my family's connected to San Francisco. As I said, my grandfather was Afro Latino, so there's a lot of emotions that stirred up, I guess.
how many people were enraged watching the? Okay. Um, yeah, so you're certainly not alone in having that response. It's one of the first things in my notes that we're going to come back to today is to answer Stephen's call about kind of healing and how we move forward and what our resources are. I'm going to talk about the distinction between rage and outrage in a moment. So thanks for putting that into the cipher. Go ahead, Sister Uqba.
السلام عليكم
Take
Dr.
us
Bilal.
now.
I believe unity that will strengthen the people and empower them. This is the takeaway message, and not to be betrayed. No matter what temptations are offered, just stick to the group. That's what I.
Yeah, unity. The the devil profits from division. Does he not? And you can read devil however you want to read it in that in that particular sentence. That's one of the principal, lessons that our disunity is going to destroy us. The divide and conquer techniques haven't changed. COINTELPRO and other forms of infiltration continue to be successful because people allow themselves to be disunited. Go ahead, Angela.
I was gonna say two things. I was remembering the line about, a badge is scarier than a gun. It's like you got the whole army behind you, and how true that is. Like the badge is like an AK-47. It's just the whole tank. And the other thing that one of the things that I was left with, this was a fantastic movie. I saw it for the first time. Um, was just, like for example, when the crowns are sort of distrustful, and he comes in, he comes up unarmed, and he accepts the fact that they don't trust him. He walks away, and then at the end you just see like how they've just earned his love and his trust, and that's just what makes it all the more heartbreaking. Like even though he doesn't have like a religion, like you said before, there's something spiritual about the Black Panther Party. And like I cried again when I was reading the foreword of the book, and Cornell West has the line about like they saw the people's needs as holy. Uh,
Mm,
so yeah, I was just really just moved by the way he just always like in the beginning, he takes the criticism about how like you might want to, you're a poet, but you might want to change some of your tactics about the way you use speech, use language. And yeah, he stayed humble, and he proved himself to be somebody who wasn't just the real deal, was walking the walk, but also just somebody who is open hearted. In fact, and I'll just end with this. I read like one criticism of the movie was simply that somebody felt that Fred Hampton was much more warm and open-hearted than the movie depicts him. Like the movie sort of depicts him as sort of like, I didn't really see this, but the somebody felt that they show him as sort of more cold and hardened than he actually was in reality. But anyway.
yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. We'll go ahead with Christina, and then we'll get started.
Oh, hello.
Hey,
Thank you. I'm new to the space, so thank you for
welcome
having
in,
me.
welcome in, welcome in.
I just wanted to share. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional.
We're all a
Um,
little bit emotional. I didn't even know. I started breaking up in the opening comment. I didn't even think I was emotional like that. But so yeah,
yeah, just reflecting on the mighty shoulders we stand on in this struggle.
come
You know,
on.
the deep, deep work that's been done, the debt we owe to the scholars and um, gentlemen like Chairman Fred. who was barely 21 when he gave his life to this struggle. I'm Korean, so I come from a lineage, of struggle myself and oppression. So I'm, despite the tears, excuse me, I'm really encouraged because this is not new. We have so many amazing, we have so much wisdom and knowledge that we can draw from, and so much work that's already been done. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that into the discussion and bring that energy into this space as well. Um, you know, that
Yeah,
part.
and thank you
Sorry.
for sanctifying the space with your generous heart, and reminding us, and I'm very upfront about the role that faith plays in my own struggle for liberation. Um, let's be clear, that like we are the fulfillment um, of ancestral liberation struggles. We bear inside our beings and our bodies, not just in our collective memory, but at our core, a deep responsibility to those that came before us. And one of the great lessons that I've learned, over, I mean, we're going to talk about Fanon today. For the first time I taught Fanon, I was 19. I was doing Pan-Africanist Revolutionary Book Club, the first one when I was 19. And what I've learned, for doing this kind of work for 30 years is that um, it really is our responsibility to do whatever we can to move the action forward in our time. Um, it is my sincere prayer that everyone here taste liberation with their own tongue, that they feel it with their own hand, that they see it with their own eye, that they hold it and they pass it to subsequent generations. But I know that may not be the case. That this may be something that doesn't come to fruition until our children's generation or our grandchildren's generation. But the people that held that trust with faith and sincerity and with courage are the reason why we're able to struggle today. So we owe them no less than that kind of resolve to, at the very least, say that I will not allow us to be pushed back on my watch. I will not allow us to retreat, that we will hold the line, and that in every moment we will move things forward whenever we can, because this is the debt that we owe to those great ancestors, to those courageous heroes, the ones that we know and the ones that we don't. Go ahead, Kia.
Thank you. I hate that movie. I hate that movie. I saw it in the theater. I did not watch it again because I hate that movie. And I'm just reminded, and I'm thankful to Christina. Even when I got here, my heart is heavy, and I felt myself about to cry. And I appreciate this space because so often in the gentrification of our history, we celebrate, but we don't get to mourn.
Say word.
We talk about King and all this stuff. I'm not gonna go off on a tangent, but when I tell you my heart is just broken and it's connected, it's not politics, it's not a reading, it's personal, and I really, something you just said reminded me of how I feel. I'm in this space of like recognizing my complicity in this system that's trying to kill me.
Mm,
So I can have this conversation with y'all, I can watch this movie and then just go back to the bullshit. Oh, what's on Netflix? Oh, I got this meeting tomorrow. Who gives a? You know what I mean? And so I'm just in this space, and moments like this don't help me. As far as Chairman Fred, he started a free breakfast program when he was 10 years old. America is so threatened by liberation, and that
mm,
continued. It wasn't that long ago. He was my brother's age, who America also killed because he had a heart disease. And we are such open people who have an open heart have an open heart. And if you live in that way, because your heart is so open, America will actually break your heart. And that's why heart disease is the number one killer in our community. Anyway, I just I hope we get to a point in the conversation. I think we will, but also maybe just some things to take forward of like, how do we tend to our grief? How do we not necessarily romanticize our kin, which I call them, I got a Fred Hampton t-shirt and I actually thought about myself, but so what? What does that mean? Like, what are you doing?
Yep.
And I like what you said too, as far as, and maybe you're not saying this, but it's kind of where I'm at. It's one or the other. It's pick a side time. It's pick a side time. It's not enough to do DEI at work. It's not enough to, you know what I mean? And I'm just at the point where it's like, it is go time. If there was ever go time, it's now. I know that stuff is important, but it feels like it's just treading the water. It's revolution time. Let me say that. And I'll end there. And thanks for
You ain't putting no words in my mouth when you say that. You're pulling words right out of my heart. You said so much, and I'm not gonna to cheapen it with addition. I just want to underline one thing. Walter Rodney, who I mentioned yesterday, is one of those great revolutionary socialists and scholars and diaspora liberation guides. That was the thing that was most powerful to me when I first read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Is that in the introduction, he said that despite the fact that he grew up dirt poor, a child of the diaspora in Guyana, he had to confess to the privilege that he had and the participation that he played in the oppression of Africa, and that produced a binding moral obligation upon him to take whatever action he could to alleviate the suffering of his brothers and sisters in humanity. So it's go time because there is binding moral obligation that is incumbent upon every last one of us to not sit idly by in this moment because that's where we started. It is go time. It's been go time. It's revolution time. This is not a drill. This is what we have been drilling for. This is not a drill. This is what we have been drilling for. All of the masks are off. The veneer is removed. It is time to fight. There is nothing left to talk about. So, how we organize and how we build the resistance that is necessary is crucial. And to understand the fundamental role that we have to play from here inside the belly of the beast in liberating humanity from the yoke of 5 centuries of the same slaughter, 5 centuries of the same genocide, 5 centuries of the same dehumanization, 5 centuries of the brokenness of humanity being reproduced systematically by all of our institutions of power. No more. It ends here. And if that is our aim and our goal, even if we fall short of it, then we will leave a legacy like Huey P. left. We will leave a legacy like Fred Hampton left. We will leave a legacy like Kwame Ture left. We will leave a legacy. Asada Shakur is still around, but like Asada Shakur is leaving with us. I didn't want to like accidentally put her with the ancestors. But y'all feel me? That if we stand on that principle, that this is not a drill, that this is the moment that we must fight to win, then whether successful or failure in success or failure is our lot in the short term, then victory is ours. Okay, so we're starting off hot today. I'm gonna take a drink of cool water, but it's good. We need to start out with this kind of heat in order to impress upon people the urgency of the situation that we find ourselves in and the necessity to act. We're going to come back to that necessity and what it calls forth from each and every last one of us in this room, and what we will need to do moving forward from here. That's where we're going to end today. But I wanted to take us back into a couple of the key components that we didn't get to that actually come out through watching the movie. And the last thing I'll just say about this, when you said that I hate this movie, So I speak Wolof fluently. I lived in Senegal for a number of years. Every time people come to visit, I have to take them to Gorée Island and go to the slave castle. And I hate going to that damn slave castle. But I have to go every time because who else can tell the story and speak the local language and knows the past. So I have to do it no matter how much I hate it. And I hate it every time and I cry every time and I do it anyway. Because to sufficiently honor the sacrifice and to live inside that grief, despite the fact that I want to just wash it away and forget about it and suppress it, tell stories about black millionaires instead of slavery. It's a tremendous dishonor to the sacrifices of those that came before us to not tell their stories, to not sing their songs. But the best way that we can honor their sacrifices is by operationalizing the resources that they left us with and utilizing them to lead the people to victory. It's not in monumentalizing past achievements. It is in learning the lessons from the past successes and the past failures, and then taking the necessary revolutionary steps towards liberation in the time in which we find ourselves. And that is the spirit of today's gathering. The spirit of today's gathering is to learn from both those successes and failures, because the Black Panther Party was founded as the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Later, the self-defense is dropped. But self-defense is also defending oneself from infiltration. Self-defense is also defending oneself from having everything that we build rent asunder by our own trauma, our own moral weakness, our own fear, our own greed. The question that Stephen called us to yesterday is at the heart of the affair today, is that if we are broken as instruments, and the instrument that we use to negotiate liberation, to seize liberation, is ourself, and the instrument itself is broken, then our efforts in liberation struggle are going to be compromised. So today is about learning those lessons about self-defense in a fulsome way. And building the kind of communal space that is going to be needed, and the kind of fellowship and solidarity and spiritual connectedness that is going to be needed in order to lead us to victory. So first, back to this distinction and to the self-defense. And now I'll get back out of preacher mode and into professor mode. I think that by the end of the day, I'll be back in campaign candidate mode. But I want to start today for a couple of different reasons with Kathleen Cleaver. And I want to start with Kathleen Cleaver talking about the Panther philosophy and how it relates to the mythology of nonviolence, because this is going to take us into what is ultimately needed in order to actually protect a successful revolutionary movement. And let me just pull this up now, screen. Okay. Is everybody seeing that?
I'd like to make a comment about what Mr. Allen just said about nonviolence. He said it's not... we have never taken any position that nonviolence was either cowardly or... What was the other thing?
Subservient.
Subservient. That's not even the issue. Yeah. What is at issue is, does it work? Nonviolence is a very non-functional approach in a society that's based entirely on organized force and violence. A country was created in violence, land was taken in violence, society that's perpetuating itself through violence in the ghettos, in Vietnam, in Africa, wherever you look. There's organized force and violence at work to maintain the society. So whether the solution is organized force and violence is a secondary question. The question is, what is the problem? And the problem is organized force and violence. And one of the things that's very clear about the philosophy of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton is the statement that there's a world of difference between 20 million unarmed people and 20 million people organized and armed to the gills. That's power right there.
That's your First Amendment.
That's power.
Let me get
Kathleen Cleaver said what she said. And it's important for us to understand that we have been indoctrinated into a discourse that portrays nonviolent resistance as moral and ethical, and that portrays armed self-defense as violence. I'm going to repeat that. We have been indoctrinated into a bourgeois propagandist rhetoric that portrays nonviolent resistance as inherently moral and ethical, and as that armed defense is somehow morally deficient. And this is one of the first notions that we have to disabuse ourselves of. This was my one argument that when I was invited to run as a Green Party candidate by Dr. Jill Stein, nonviolence is right there on the Green Party, principles. And I'm like, yes, nonviolence is the ideal, but nonviolence is not the end all and be all of resistance, nor can it be. And if anybody had given me an argument on that point, then I would not have run as a Green Party vice presidential candidate. And I was really pleased the fact that, Jill and I were meeting with former Black Panther Party leaders and membership, and that there was no ambiguity about this position, that armed self-defense is not violence. Armed self-defense is a minimum requirement for honoring and respecting human dignity. If you are in a state and society that will inflict routinized harm upon you through all of its institutions, and you do not protect yourself from that, then you are guilty of a moral wrong. That is not nobility. That is not ethics. That is a propaganda that is designed to disempower you. Going back to the principles that we talked about yesterday, and that Black internationalism that was shaping the way that the Panthers thought. In the Panther focus on self-defense, they were bringing together two crucial dimensions. The one, the kind of Marxist, Pan-Africanist independent struggle represented through the writings of Fanon, but they were also bringing out a very much homegrown Black Second Amendment ethic that has been operative through the history of Black communities, and it is the only reason why we have been able to survive. We've been able to survive because we have organized for our defense. So I'm going to pull a couple of those pieces together as we think about how to operationalize these principles for ourselves. Let me find the slides. There we go. So, let's start with Fanon and the theoretical piece. So Fanon was one of the most important intellectual resources of the Panthers. Is everybody able to see this? Sorry. Okay. So Frantz Fanon in Wretched of the Earth, and Fanon is cited by Huey in Revolutionary Suicide. He's mentioned by Fred Hampton in multiple speeches. He writes, and again, I spoke about Aimé Césaire yesterday, and Aimé Césaire being the first to articulate that notion of imperial boomerang, that fascism, Nazism, these are the reverberations of colonial violence upon the colonizer inside the society. And Aimé Césaire is a close friend and intellectual comrade of Frantz Fanon. Fanon in Wretched of the Earth writes, colonialism is not a thinking machine nor a body endowed with reasoning faculties. It is violence in its natural state, and it will only yield when confronted with greater violence. In another passage later on, he says that part of what armed self-defense awakens inside the colonized subject is that it helps remove the internalized inferiority complex that comes with a subjugated people, that it's a crucial part of the psychology of liberation. He argues that thus the native discovers that his life, his breath, his beating heart are the same as those of the settler. He finds out that the settler's skin is not of any more value than a native skin, and it must be said that this discovery shakes the world in a very necessary manner. All the new revolutionary assurance of the native stems from it. For if, in fact, my life is worth as much as the settler's, his glance no longer shrivels me up nor freezes me, and his voice no longer turns me to stone. That there is an important psychological exorcism of the specter of colonial inferiority that is exercised when one takes responsibility for their own defense. They bleed just how you bleed. They're not superhuman. I'm a fan of the Predator franchise. I will confess to that right now. And that's one of my favorite lines. If it bleeds, you can kill it. And when you understand that they bleed just the way that you bleed, then that is in and of itself empowering, and it reminds you of the fundamentally equal nature of your shared humanity, despite the fact that all of the structures say that their lives are more valuable than yours, that their dignity is more valuable than yours, that their property is more valuable than yours, that their lineages are more honorable than yours. All of that disappears when you take responsibility for the protection of your communities, when you stand up. This is something that African revolutionary movements, armed revolutionary movements were teaching to the Panthers, but it was also something that was indigenous and endogenous inside African American communities. And that is also a history that they have been trying to conceal from us. They don't want us to talk about the way that Black communities have organized for effective self-defense in order to assure our survival over the long term. Let me go back to the slides. On the right-hand side, is everybody seeing that? Okay. On the right-hand side of the screen, Robert F. Williams, who armed resistance movement that he led. This is his book, Negroes with Guns. Organized in North Carolina, drawing on that longer term Black Southern self-defense tradition. Fannie Lou Hamer, great organizer and activist, famously said, I keep a shotgun in every corner of my bedroom, and the first cracker even look at me like he want to throw some dynamite on my porch won't ever write his mama again. um, that is that good old-fashioned homegrown protect your own. And that is the basis of all um, successful resistance, is to have enough sense of responsibility that you are not going to let yourself be needlessly abused, that you are not going to let people that are in your care be needlessly abused, that if necessary, and God forbid that it be necessary, but if it's necessary, that you will do what is required in order to keep yourself and people that are in your care safe. I said before I was ever invited onto the campaign in an interview with Middle East Eye and the great Ashfaq Kareem, he asked me, he said, you know, we know how much Malcolm's path, like, you know, influenced your own. He said, what do you think Malcolm would say about where we are now? And the question caught me off guard because he hadn't told me he was going to ask me that. He hadn't told me he was going to ask me anything, but it just kind of flattened for me. So I laughed when asked. I said, well, I don't know, because I try not to channel other people and put words in their mouth and ventriloquize my heroes. You know, the same way that Huey said, we don't say that we are doing what Malcolm would have done, because that's kind of like It's a little chesty, to imagine that you're doing it the way that Malcolm would have done it. So I laughed. I said, I don't know. I said, but I do know how he would have answered the question, do you condemn Hamas? Because we've heard Malcolm talk about Mau Mau and how you never compare the resistance of an oppressed people to the violence that is inflicted upon them in the first place. That's not violence. Walter Rodney said the exact same thing. He said, by what moral scale do you compare the violence of colonization and occupation to the armed resistance of people to it? And what I said at that time was, if I hit you over the head and take your stuff, I am committing an obvious moral wrong. But if I raise my hand to keep you from hitting someone over the head or taking their stuff, I am engaged in an absolute moral right. So there is no comparison between self-defense and violent occupation. And what's more is that, as I said in that interview regarding the armed resistance of the people of Palestine, is that armed resistance to occupation is something that is enshrined in international law. It's not up for debate from a legal standpoint, but from a moral standpoint and from an ethical standpoint, the right to self-defense is not sufficient because one has a responsibility for defense. It is not a right. If somebody, God forbid, run up in my house and try to hurt my wife or kids, I do not have the right to say, I have a right to defend my family, but I'm going to forego that right. Correct? I have a responsibility to take a stand in that moment and protect myself and anyone who is in my care. So one of the first things that people need to understand is that we have to get rid of this bourgeois notion that nonviolence, as it has been framed, is in and of itself a positive moral good. Now, from the Islamic standpoint, always you seek a peaceful resolution to any and everything, and peace is always the preferred option. And peace is always the preferred option for all moral people, and peace is the aim of self-defense. But if people give you no other option except to go through them to get to justice or peace, then the path is clear. Let's go to another one of the great heirs of this tradition, Kwame Ture, the late great Stokely Carmichael, who has several important things today to say in today's session. About this philosophy of nonviolence, he said, Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for Black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. And one of the things that we have learned over these 22 plus months of genocide in Palestine is that not only are people not being moved by witnessing visible moral atrocities, some revel in it, some celebrate it. Because if you understand white supremacy as a moral sickness or as a mental illness, right? As a kind of mass psychosis. That's how Toni Morrison described it. She said, it feels crazy. It is crazy. She said, it's like a profound neurosis, which no one talks about for what it is. But that profound neurosis of white supremacy, and of course, Zionism is just an ethnic variant of white supremacy. That profound neurosis of white supremacy produces joy in people when harm is inflicted, that it revels in dehumanization. And under those kinds of circumstances, you cannot count on a moral appeal to your oppressors. If they had morality, they wouldn't be oppressing you. So that means that you have to take basic necessary precautions. Malcolm put it this way. He said that and Malcolm was never an advocate. None of the people that we're talking about were advocates for any kind of aggressive violence. But Malcolm's basic argument was that if you live in a state that not only will not protect you, but will intentionally expose you to harm. If it's very agents of law enforcement, do we need to talk about ICE? If it's very agents of law enforcement are going to be systematically inflicting harm upon people, then you have to take up your own self-defense. So in the moment that we are currently in, every single person in this room, and I know that a lot of y'all are not going to do this, but I'm going to say that you have to. You need to learn the carry laws in your area. If you do not know how to shoot, you need to learn how to shoot. If you do not know how to farm, you need to learn how to farm. If you are you have to take every responsible measure that you can to assure for the safety and capacity for self-reproduction of the communities in which you are embedded. That is your personal moral responsibility. Now, not everybody has the same level of ability or disability. You will know how to engage in that. Your best role may be in supporting others and so forth, but it is an individual responsibility that is incumbent upon every single person in this struggle to help our communities protect one another. So one of the most important things that everybody can do is that if you are not already currently involved in a rapid response or an ICE watch, that you need to get involved with a rapid response and ICE watch. And Fernando de Veras put a couple of resources for trainings here in the state of California. Some of those are online, some of those are in person, but take it upon yourself to get trained in protecting your communities. And our communities now are all of the communities of the oppressed. And that was the other principal lesson to draw from Judas and the Black Messiah. That's the reason why they came for Fred, was because Fred was able to bring the young patriots into the fold. Fred was able to bring the young lords into the fold. Fred was able to help build, and Bobby Seale was incredible at this. Like, if you've ever watched footage of Bobby Seale speaking to working class whites, it is fantastic. They were able to speak from the basis of their own authentic experience as an oppressed community, not to simply inflate personal identity, but to trigger those chords in other oppressed people that would cause them to see the shared nature of the struggle. What did Fred say in the video that I had you guys watching? He said, we're not going to fight fire with fire. We're going to fight fire with water. We're not going to fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity. We're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism. We're going to fight capitalism with socialism. You do not fight fire with fire. You fight fire with water. And it was the ability to bridge those communities. And all of our communities are now connected. All of our communities are now connected because in the 60 years intervening, the way that extractive international capital has come to function has made it clear that it's literally now just 0.5% of the population, which is extracting everything from everyone else. take the necessary actions to protect oppressed communities. And that means learning to fight. If you're not already trained in some form of self-defense, get trained in some form of self-defense. If you do not already know how to shoot, get trained, learn what the local laws are. That was what made the Panthers so terrifying, was that, and pardon me for running off into a tangent, but this is also important. Huey P. Newton walked after killing a cop. They do not want you to know about all of the times various Panthers were acquitted or had hung juries after armed confrontations with police. And the reason for that is they don't want you to know that you are not required to submit to an extra legal murder just because the person that is trying to commit an extra legal murder against you happens to have a badge. You actually still have rights of self-defense. So learn what the laws are. That's why Huey was able to get off. That's why many Panthers were. We are going to need to learn the best ways to keep people safe. The best ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you can get rapid response, if you can get ice watch, if you can get people out of harm's way, all the better. But as a last resort, you should know how to defend yourself, because it is clear that these people are going to keep escalating in the scale of violence that they're proposing. They have earmarked $170 billion. Thank you, Fernando, for putting that in the chat. Sorry, Fernando texted me. He said Huey was acquitted after being accused of killing a cop. Like, I didn't mean to say Huey did anything. I wasn't there, and I don't talk to police. So, so Fernando texted me to get me right on my lingo. We can cut that part from the video, but that's 1,000% correct. And in the same vein, I ain't see Luigi do nothing. I ain't see Luigi Mangione do nothing. I ain't see Luigi Mangione do nothing. Um, now, and thank you for that timely text, because it also allows me to then to make this transition, because this is important. And without saying what I just said, then this next part would come off wrong. So file away everything that I just said, and I want to now bring you into another piece of this. And this is the piece that Stephen was calling us towards yesterday. So the one of the great leaders, great heroes, and now that he's passed, a martyr of the Black liberation struggle, was Sekou Odinga. Sekou Odinga was one of the people who, again, Fernando, thank you for the reminder, who allegedly broke Assata Shakur out of federal prison. Okay. And Sekou Odinga served 33 years for that before he was able to get released. And when he was released, I was honored to be able to host him at UCSB for a conversation with students. This is in the middle of uh, the early days of the post October 7th uprisings. So it was fantastic. And one of the things that he said unprompted is that he said that back in those times, some of us were a little too fast to reach for the peace. He said we were angry. We were angry, and we were oppressed, and we were exploited. And some of us reached for that peace too fast. He said if I had to do it over again, there were things that I would do different. And when Dr. Jill and I sat with Aaron Dixon, and Aaron Dixon, former Seattle captain of the Black Panthers, he was appointed to that post when he was 19 years old by Huey P. Newton himself. Aaron ran as a Green Party candidate, I think in 2008, maybe. Nassim might know better than I do exactly when Aaron ran. But when we sat down and talked with Aaron, he was talking about how one of the biggest issues that he had was that they were trying to make discipline interventions, and then some of the brothers would just start shooting. And so I told him what Sekou Odinga said, and he said, yes, that's absolutely correct. He said some of us had not like processed the trauma, and so we were too quick to fire shots, and it was a problem because people were breaking discipline because of their emotional response to circumstances, right? So understand that unless and until we take this responsibility for self-defense, not as a chesty way to feel manly, not as a way to clap back at a system that has been clapping at you, but as a disciplined part of our responsibilities to keep people safe, then we risk compromising the revolution. And this is also a crucial piece, is that yes, while self-defense is morally incumbent upon all of us, it is also morally incumbent upon us to prefer a peaceful solution to a violent resolution. And many of us have made a fetish of violence as the means of revolutionary change. Many, especially many so-called leftists, think that it's not a real revolution unless shots are fired. Whereas what a revolution is it is a turning of the wheel. Revolution is a rotation. That which is at the bottom comes to the top. And that is what we are aiming for. We are aiming for the people that have been oppressed by the society to get out from underneath that oppression by any means necessary. When Malcolm said by any means necessary, he means by any means necessary. He's not saying by the gun or by the sword. And that's why when you looked at what the Panthers did on the ground and in practice, they focused on the survival programs, they focused on mutual aid, they focused on direct action, they did undertake self-defense, they ran electoral campaigns. By any means necessary means by all means. Do not leave any arrows in the quiver when it comes to fighting for revolution. So this is a delicate balance, and it is an incredibly difficult balance to maintain for people who are not healed. Incredibly difficult balance to maintain. One of the lessons that came out of the 4 years of online spiritual intensives that preceded this gathering, and I'll come to you in just a second, Fernando. Thank you for raising your hand. Is that one of the great West African revolutionary scholars, Uthman Danfodio, talked about anger, and he said, excessive anger is blameworthy, but so is insufficient anger. Insufficient anger stops you from standing up for the rights of oppressed people. Excessive anger leads you away from the capacity to reason and causes you to make mistakes in judgment. And many people think that anger is a resource for the revolutionary, but excessive anger is detrimental, not helpful. If we can learn to cultivate a distinction in our inner being between rage, a kind of blinding emotional state, and outrage, a simmering low boil that never is expiring or extinguished because the injustices of the society keep us in a state of tension. And if we can live in that state of outrage without letting it be expressed in these momentary, impulsive fits of rage that are debilitating and that are also serve as release valves for our disciplined revolutionary effort. And this is one of the things that mobilizations, mass marches sometimes do. They literally serve as emotional outlets. People let out and vent all of the emotion in some kind of ill-defined protest action that has no specific aims and does not disrupt anything. let off all that steam, and what did Kia say? Right back to Netflix, right? Whereas if we can stay in that space of anger, and if we can stay in that space of disciplined resolve, then we become much more effective instruments for long-term, successful, revolutionary organizing activity. Fernando, please raise your hand back up again so I can find you and call you in because you're right on time. There's too many people on the Zoom for me to just randomly track you down. There we go. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I just wanted to chime in when you were mentioning about how there's certain sects in leftist spaces that are very militant, that are very narrow-minded when it comes to the idea of what revolution looks like and what it calls for. I know here in Santa Ana we had protests recently where there were people who were agitating with police and wanting to throw things. And for me, I saw that there were a lot of young kids, a lot of families in the space who didn't necessarily sign up for that, but were getting caught up in this mixed violence. And I had some conversations with some of those agitators off to the side about what their goals were, and they're like, this is what revolution looks like, was essentially the vibe. And it reminded me, I was reading this book, and anybody in the chat who's interested in some literature on the Black Panther Party, there's a book called The Black Panthers Speak, edited by Philip S. Foner, that summarizes the party's platform. It has collections of essays, interviews by Huey P. Newton, and all these other resources y'all can learn from. But there's a essay or a letter in here called Correcting Mistaken Ideas by Captain Crutch, where he talks about the over militant ideology that some people in the party were having, particularly with the Black Liberation Army. And
Yep.
he talks about how these people overlook the importance of education, of on the ground organizing, the minute details that are involved in this work. So he calls it a malady of revolutionary impetuosity, where some party.
That's a bar. Yeah, go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, malady of revolutionary impetuosity. Write that down somewhere. But the idea, like the party was not just about we're gonna carry our guns and go follow police around like we learned in the videos yesterday. They did a lot more work, and for them, they were like, we need people who are willing to distribute leaflets in the community, sell newspapers, because that's how they were able to fund their programs, going out to workspaces and educating workers, going out to neighborhoods where people are suffering from the oppressive systems we live under and educating them about why that is, and what we can do about it. So for some people, that can seem like, you know, uh, a waste of time because they're looking for that Djangoism of like let's go to town, but that's not how revolution happens, and you have to recognize where you live, the imbalance of power, and work to shift that balance of power in your favor before you even consider waging that kind of revolutionary struggle.
And that phase has to be undertaken with the greatest solemnity, with the most careful kind of planning. It cannot simply be an impulsive emotional reaction. Kia, I see your hand. Don't lower it. I just want to let Chairman Fred literally come in on this specific point because I had this queued up. Where he was discussing exactly this. This is from 1969 when he's discussing the Weathermen, which was Students for a Democratic Society, their kind of militant wing, and also a group called RIM2, Revolutionary Youth Movement, and how they were blowing stuff up, and they tried to they literally staged what they call 4 days of rage in Chicago, and I didn't notice how closely that was going to fall with the distinction I wanted to make between rage and outrage. But take a look at what Chairman Fred has to say about that in this short clip. Let's see. Everybody able to see that?
Fred, where does the Black Panther Party stand concerning the Weathermen, the SDS?
We stand way back from the SDS and the Weathermen because we believe that the Weathermen action is two actions. It's RIM 2 and Weathermen. We think they call them both national action. We think that RIM 2 is national action, Weathermen is national reaction. We think it is anarchistic, opportunistic, individualistic, it's chauvinistic, it's custoristic, and that's the bad part about it. It's custoristic in that its leaders take people into situations where the people can be massacred, and they call that revolution. And it's nothing but child's play, it's folly, and it's criminal because people can be hurt. We say that they're doing exactly what the pigs want them to do. When they take people down and just do nothing, play around, and the pigs are prepared for this, and they'll wipe all of those young people out. We think these people may be sincere, but they're misguided, they're muddleheads, and they're scatterbrains. The only way we can show them is to criticize them like we're doing right now, and then leave from here and go to the federal building and have a demonstration that's to educate, a demonstration that is disciplined and organized. You know, and that's what we're gonna have to do, and let them see the examples.
How you could acquire that level of wisdom by age 21, I still don't know. Go ahead, kid. You had your hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Try that again.
Okay. Thank you. Wow. Just Chairman Fred. I really appreciate you saying that as far as violence as a tactic is a delicate balance, and I really appreciate what Fernando said. And I'm just like reminded of like, the binary arguments as far as like the embracing of Malcolm at the window with the rifle and like King was a big, I'll say the P word. Like people like make these decisions of where they're at based on these like memes and like little study. And so it's a difficult conversation for me or challenging conversation because like in my hometown of Philadelphia this week, 40 people were killed in mass shootings.
Yep.
It kind of in that same ego-centered knee jerk of like, you disrespected me, I'm gonna protect me and mine, and yada 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 yada.
Yep.
So I think I appreciate this conversation because it's nuanced, because I feel like in a larger context, if that's the kind of thing, whoever wrongs me, they can get it. That's why we're in this hell we're in now. And to me, God, it's all I think everybody can grab a lane in this, right? But then I think about like what violence against empower also looks like. And there's also the meme, George Zimmerman's still alive. So if we're really about it, and I'm not about it, but so I think about why are public schools still open? Why are we still on Facebook or Meta? Like, why, like these kind of daily, when I talked about my own complicity in this, and like, oh, if this happens, I'm gonna do that. You don't even check your boss at your job who's riding your ass because you 15 minutes late coming back from lunch. You know what I mean? So I just feel like it all sounds cute. And I don't pretend know what it looks like, but then coming back to the Panthers as well, to create something under those conditions. It's not like you get a grant from the government to pass out free food. It's like, yo, we're going to build this infrastructure, this system, and we're willing to protect it. But for me, and this is where I'm at, I'm not interested in getting into a shootout with Empire. But I will protect me and my community. So I just really appreciate that. I don't know if you could speak to that as far as like
Yeah.
see multiple levels of violence, mental violence, being educated, studying what we're doing now. Again, where I spend my time, energy, and money as well. And yes, self-defense. If somebody, I ride the New York City subway every day, I got to stay ready all the time. And there's police on that subway car as well, sometimes more than people. But I see these acts of like just massive action. Again, I just boggles my mind in here. In my hometown of Philadelphia, I'll leave it there, or any hood in America. I don't know how public schools are allowed to remain open, where they continually miseducate our children. Most students graduate from school, half who don't drop out, reading at a ninth grade reading level. So I see these atrocities happen every day, these killings of what Cornel West calls soul murder. And it's just seemingly allowed to rock. And I know there's grassroots movements and it's not rocking in like community organizations, but again, like that Netflix example, it's like, oh my God, that's so fucked up. Oh my God, those people in Texas. Okay, we'll be doing. Where's the 4th of July cookout? So I just want to get to that. And I'm at a level where it's like, we know the what, and I'm really on the now what. So
Yeah.
thank you for letting me share that.
No, thank you for sharing it. The now what is where we're headed in this session. We're not leaving this session without the tangible steps that we need in order to organize to move forward. That's the aim. That was always the aim of of this weekend. Um, in one of the very first online spiritual intensives I did for the Muslim community, and a lot of that particular crowd, would be described, maybe self-described as conservative. When asked a similar question, kind of about the place where we are now, um, I cursed in my answer because I had to quote the Outcast bar in order to answer the question correctly. And the what I said at that time was niggas ranting and raving about gas. Nigga, they made them gas. They got some shit that'll blow out our backs from where they stay at. Like you are ranting and raving about the guns that you got. They made those guns. They got some stuff that will blow out your back. So the distinction that I'm trying to make here is to not valorize or glamorize violence, but to rather valorize self-defense as a key moral fundamental principle. And what Chairman Fred was pulling people away from is essentially a kind of adventurism, right? That people, make a fetish of armed revolution and they make a fetish of guns. In my second academic book, Jihad of the Pen, in the conclusion of that book, I write mostly about how different Sufi leaders in West Africa made fundamental social interventions against white supremacy and slave trade and imperialism. And I talked about the fact that some of them did this with armed resistance, with military resistance, and others did it with nonviolent resistance. And I tethered that to the fact that in the Abrahamic tradition and in the Quran, some of the prophets pick up the sword and others don't. That picking up the sword is contingent upon the circumstances in which one finds oneself. Whether it is an ethical decision to pick up the sword under the circumstances is contingent upon circumstances, and circumstances shift and circumstances change. So there is no single cookie cutter answer as to when is the appropriate time to move from self-defense towards a different phase, but that is something that people have to be disciplined, they have to be healed, they have to be making those decisions on the basis of what best serves the protection and liberation of the people, rather than some kind of impulsive, trigger happy, you disrespect me, I'm gonna let off on you. So this is a kind of sophistication that our, as you put it, memeified version of Malcolm versus Martin does not allow us to engage in. And in a space like this one, where just to be clear, no matter what we say or do in this room, over the next 6 to 12 months, the violence, especially against immigrant communities and especially against Black communities, is going to be escalating exponentially. So we have to actually have had conversations that are ethical, that are moral, that are political, that are strategic, that are about how we keep people safe, because survival pending revolution literally means survival pending revolution. And getting people in harm's way is counterproductive, and that's what Fred's wisdom in that short clip mentioned. Shayla, I'm gonna come to you, and then I'm just looking at the time. This will have to be relatively brief because I want to get back on track to leave enough time for some other things. So please pardon me if I'm shortening your intervention a little bit.
We can defer this to later,
Okay.
Professor Ware. It's
Okay.
fine. I would rather because it's going to be a little long, so I will defer this to later.
Sounds good. We'll save it specifically for the Q&A portion. So this conversation leads us into this conversation that we started yesterday, which is that there's no hmm, we cannot fully and maximally benefit from what the Panthers were able to do without understanding the foundational influence of Marxist Leninist views and anti-capitalist socialist views more broadly on the movement. Kwame Ture, who I mentioned before, and I should just, when Kwame Ture said what he said about King, it's very significant because Kwame Ture started out in SNCC, that Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, and he eventually becomes the founder of All African People's Revolutionary Party, because he sees the eventual limit of that kind of moral framing of nonviolence. But Kwame Ture is also a really crucial figure because he makes a fundamental intervention into this conversation that we're having now about how to have healing be a part of how we get free on the basis of his organizing efforts in the South. He said that he was trained by Marxist, theorists, and he was supposed to go down and tell people that they have to be atheists to be good Marxists. And he said the first problem that he encountered was that every single organizing meeting was in the church. And that before every single collective activity when organizing with Black folks in the South, everybody said a prayer. And he said he immediately understood that he was being mistrained and misguided in the way that he was supposed to engage with his own people. So when you listen to some of his talks, and I strongly recommend that you spend time with Kwame Ture, because Kwame Ture, so Fred and Huey are incredible in bringing principle and practice together into praxis, building things. As a theoretician, Kwame Ture is unparalleled. Unparalleled. So in the talk that I'm about to show you just a brief segment of, what he has done is he's actually told this long history of African religious and spiritual traditions, including Judaism, including Islam, including African traditional religions. And then he lands on this incredibly potent contribution that I want to share to you as the door onto the next part of our conversation. Let me just pull this up now. Is everybody able to see this? I alluded to this yesterday. I wanted you guys to actually hear it from the source.
No universal religion came out of Europe. All of them entered Europe from the outside. Thus, since they entered Europe from the outside, the state structure had the possibility of using the religion against the people at all moves once they could not disperse of the religion. If one would look at the history of Europe, this certainly was the truth. Christianity carried on a great struggle against the state. When the state could no longer crush Christianity, it took it over. If one would look in every aspect of life, one would see this is Europe's relation to religion on the cultural field. Therefore, to speak about atheism in religion, speak about atheism in relation to religion and the control by the state in Europe is not difficult. Thus, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels can correctly state in the Communist Manifesto, and we quote, "Religion is the opium of the masses." This is correct for Europe. It is not correct for the rest of the world. It is certainly not correct for Africa. One can see even today in the culture of Africa this great struggle of revolution and religion marching hand in hand. The same Christianity which was used to oppress slavery was the same Christianity which Nat Turner used to cut off the slave master's head in the name of the Lord. The same Christianity which segregationists used to keep us in segregation was the same Christianity which Martin Luther King used to break down segregation. If one would just look just at Africa alone, but of course throughout the world, one would see this aspect of religion and revolution running hand in hand is necessary in these cultures. We are certain that the indigenous people, if they try to cut off their religion from their struggle in Hawaii, they will run around in circles. Therefore, when one talks of nationality, one will understand one's culture, because
if the indigenous people of Hawaii were to try to get themselves free from their oppression without reference to their tradition, they would find themselves running around in circles. And this is a great bifurcation that currently exists inside the decolonial space is that there is a leftist intervention that sees itself as purely political and that makes no explicit reference to spirituality or to spiritual traditions. Then there are spiritual movements that are about the decolonization of our inner lives. And this is mapped on to this distinction that was at the heart of a lot of conflicts, actually, with the Panthers. You saw this glossed in the opening scene where Deborah is trying to get Fred not to go so hard at the Black nationalists. Where Kwame Ture eventually lands through his careful exploration of the history of his people independently, using Marx as an analytical tool, but not being dependent on Marx, is with a different stance about how our indigenous sacred traditions have served as fundamental instruments that have aided our liberation because they have been institutions that have helped to humanize us. I will tell just a short version of seeing this manifested. The first time I went to Senegal, I was coming from Washington, D.C., which was at that time the murder capital. Kia's talking about Philly. Listen, Philly in 2025, is a walk in the park compared to D.C. in 1991. I mean, it's a city at that time of 600,000 people, and we were 700 murders a year, 800 murders a year. When I would go visit my stepbrothers, I would go to Georgia and Morton in DC. It was a block they called Lorton Morton because it was a revolving door between Lorton Federal Penitentiary and that block on Morton Avenue. And I can only count maybe 3 times when I went and visited my dad and my half brothers at that spot where I didn't get shot at. So I went to Senegal for the first time at that same point in my life. I went to West Africa for the first time. And I encountered abject poverty that made a mockery of the poverty, the extreme poverty that I had grown up in DC. And I asked a close friend of mine, he's still one of my closest friends, I said, how many murders a year are there in Senegal? And he said, murders? I said, yeah. He said, you mean when someone kills someone on purpose? He literally wanted clarification. And I said, yeah. He said 9 or 10. I said, what's the population of Senegal? He says about 7, 8 million. That's what it was at that time. I told him that I came from a city that had a population of about 600,000. We had 800 murders a year. And I said, whatever that man did to us, he did good. Whatever that man did to us, he did good. Because if you took my people and put them under these material circumstances, you could go away for 6 months, come back, and we'd have killed each other off by the time you got back. Because the institutions of white supremacy to which we have been subjected are fundamentally designed to dehumanize us. They're designed to cause us to destroy ourselves, to participate explicitly and openly in our self-destruction, to go on to the other side of town, and as Nipsey Hussle put it, to go looking for somebody that looks just like us, that walks just like us, but's wearing the other color. He said, you pass the square, you pass the person of another race, but when you see somebody that's got your same swagger, but they're on the other side of town, and he said, that's wild. He said, you're being taught to literally go out and hunt yourself. So it was being embedded and in those systems of humanization that Senegambian society had evolved over thousands of years that helped put me back together. This version of me does not happen without those institutions of spiritual transformation and socialization, because these are institutions that have been making people into people for thousands of years before white supremacy ever came into existence. And part of our decolonization process has to be returning back. And this is not just for Black folks. It's not just for indigenous folks. What were you before you became white? Before you had your languages taken from you, before you had your dances taken from you, before you had your culture taken from you. That's why the Irish, the ones that stayed, go so hard, and the ones that came over here go so soft. because they had a direct experience of British colonialism and have been mining their own spiritual resources in oppositional dialectic to. That's why Ireland stays Catholic because they went Anglican. Resist with all of your resources by any means necessary, including religious and spiritual and ethical. These are not two separate struggles. The struggle for spiritual elevation and the struggle for social justice are the same because both are rooted in revolutionary love for human beings, in mercy and in compassion. And without utilizing these instruments to heal ourselves, we are going to continue to reproduce the violences in which we were raised and embedded. Without some kind of active effort to put ourselves back together and make ourselves whole. One of the most powerful academic books that I ever read was by my colleague Jason Young at the University of Michigan. It's called Rituals of Resistance. And it's about how enslaved Africans kept alive religious forms from their motherlands in order to socialize people into their humanity in the face of systems that were designed to dehumanize. Well, what greater act of resistance is there to our being treated like commodities than to embrace our humanity and to root ourselves in our traditions of making ourselves into fully human people? That is not something that's going to happen by accident. It's not something that's going to happen without a great deal of intentionality. And I understand that that is not something that you guys are used to hearing about in political spaces. But one of the main reasons for the failing of contemporary radical politics is that it lacks a transcendent spiritual dimension. Do you think King made the outcomes that he made through nonviolent resistance? Nonviolent resistance has a hit or miss legacy going back to Thoreau's theorization of it in Western societies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. There is no magic in nonviolent protest. The magic was that King was able to create a transcendent narrative that was about redemption for the oppressed and the oppressor alike. And that spoke to people's hearts. It awakened something inside of people. It is not an accident that the great leaders of those revolutionary movements, Malcolm and Martin, were religious leaders before they were political leaders. Because they were speaking from deep truths embedded in the Black liberation tradition. And that Black liberation tradition tells us, honor your spirituality. Do not shy away from it. Do not walk away from it. And I know a lot of y'all are not going to be able to hear that. I know a lot of y'all would rather your political candidate not be talking about spirituality and religion, but these are facts from the Black radical tradition, whether you like them or whether you hate them. And we are going to need every last one of those sacred resources in order to protect ourselves. Back to that point of self-defense. Self-defense is not just about protecting our bodies. Self-defense is about protecting our hearts. It is about protecting our spirits. It is about protecting our souls, not just our physical bodies. And we must find the language in this time to call to the hearts of people the way that Malcolm called to the hearts of people, the way that Dr. King called to the hearts of people. There's a lot more that I could say about that. We can save it for the Q&A. The last part, for the presentation before we go to question and answer is more gems from Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. And this is also back to the lesson about how we take not just the Panther legacy, but the whole Black Power legacy together. I mean, quite literally, it was an infiltration that led to the torturing of an AA, All African People's Revolution, AAPRP member by Panthers that kept Kwame Ture and the Panthers ever from becoming a single unit. It was literally just the feds infiltrated those two organizations and made it so that they could never come together. They had no disagreements when it came to strategy. They had no disagreements when it came to ideology. They were divided by a direct infiltration. I'll say more about that in a minute, but you will have heard me say this before. You're going to hear me say it, inshallah, Lord willing, many more times. One of the most important lessons that Kwame Ture left us with is the distinction between mobilization and organization. The distinction between mobilization and organization. And if we want to talk about where we are now and how we operationalize the lessons from the Panthers and from the AAPRP and from the other Black Power movements of that time, is that this space that we are creating, this new political space that we are creating, has to be laser focused on moving people from mobilization to organization. Kwame Ture said, and this isn't a direct quote, this is my synthesis of things that he says in a few different ways. So I won't attribute this to him. You can attribute this to me. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. If we are trying to understand the significance and the opportunity of the moment that we're currently in, reflect on the fact that we have never seen greater mass mobilization on the issue that animated Panther activity. First, police brutality, police violence against Black people. In 2020, we saw the greatest mass mobilization around police brutality against Black people that has ever occurred in human history. 10 times the size of the Ferguson protests in every country practically across the planet, right? Resonance in the Floyd uprisings. People perceive the injustice, mass mobilization. I've been marching against police brutality against Black folks since I was 13 years old, when a kid in my neighborhood in South Minneapolis was shot in his own backyard with a water gun, killed. Playing with a squirt gun in your own backyard, cop shoots a kid. In those protests, my mom was often the only white person at the protest. I didn't see any white people at the protest, except for the one that drove me there, right? In 2020, you would see white folks outnumbering Black folks 3-1. Here in California, Mexican Americans outnumbering Black folks 2-1. Mass mobilization. People awake to the nature of the problem, correct read of the situation, mass protest, mass mobilization. But where was the organization against the system that produced the violence? What Kwame Ture said, and this part is a direct quote, he said, mobilization is temporary and ephemeral. Organization is permanent and eternal. Organization creates institutional structures. Mobilization is momentary, it passes. And he said mobilization is easy because people have an innate sense of justice and injustice. When some immediate wrong happens, people can be quickly mobilized to respond to the immediate wrong. But we have to take these moments of mobilization to organize people against the structures which are lying beneath the injustice that got people mobilized in the first place. So because we didn't do that in 2020, because there was a COINTELPRO-like infiltration of BLM, let's be honest about that. Team Blue takes power and police kill more people in every year. 2020, new record. 2021, new record. 2022, new record. 2023, new record. 2024, new record. By the way, violence in the society, despite the trauma that we find in places like Philly, despite the trauma that we find in places like Chicago, gun violence compared to where we were in the 90s or even in the early 2000s is way down. The overall violence in the society is plummeting rapidly. Police violence, on the other hand, continues to escalate. Police have killed more people. They set a new record for killing people in every single year. And at this point in time, 1 in every 3 stranger homicides, in other words, when a person kills someone that they don't know, is when a police officer kills a civilian. Because most of the violence that's embedded in the society is not violence that police can protect you from. It's people that know one another hurting one another. A lot of it is domestic violence, which goes back to that misogyny that we were talking about that needed to be uprooted from the Panthers and that they didn't address sufficiently. And that if we don't address it sufficiently, we will reproduce those errors. Well, what have we seen? We've seen an escalation in police murder every year because we had mobilization around the issue of police brutality, not organization against the system that produced it. For those of us that have understood Zionism as white supremacy from the beginning, we can all bear witness that we've never seen anything like this moment in pro-Palestine liberation mobilization. Nobody has ever seen crowds like this standing up for a free Palestine. No one has ever seen it. Mark Lamont Hill lost his job because he said from the river to the sea, that was less than a decade ago. Now there's nothing that they can do to stop you, no matter how hard they try. And public opinion has shifted massively. 70% of registered Democrat voters stand with Palestine. Israel has the lowest approval ratings that it's ever had. And we've seen massive mobilizations, huge crowds of people. Have we not? Where is the organization against the system that's producing the violence? What did the Panthers say about power? Go back to Panther, power. Power is the ability to affect outcomes and make them behave in the desired manner. We have been mobilizing, we have been protesting. Where is the power to produce the outcome, to actually stop them from doing the thing? The power comes from organization, not from mobilization, not from going out and venting your anger or your frustration in a march. But if you are going to have a protest, have the protest disrupt something, have a specific demand, have it actually stop traffic. That takes organization. It cannot be done with simple mobilization because mobilization simply channels a people's emotional energy. Organization, to go back to what Chairman Fred was saying, we're going to show them how this is done with disciplined structure that produces specific outcome. That's why he was so dangerous. That's why they had to take him out. Last example. Abolish ICE, immigrant rights activism. We've never seen such massive, the uprisings that we're seeing, it's not LA in 92, right? But it is significant mobilization and the biggest public mobilization that we're seeing about stopping this Gestapo abuse and kidnapping. We're seeing more mass mobilization in defense, especially of our Latino brothers and sisters, than we've ever seen before. But it is not producing the outcome. It is not stopping the result. And the reason is, to go back to where we started, is that organization is what is required. Now, Malcolm said we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. Kwame Ture drew the distinction between mobilization and organization. The reason why we're in this gathering today, reflecting on how we learn and apply the lessons from the Panthers and other such groups, is that it is my belief that the function and role of a political party is to channel the people's energy from mobilization around issues into organizing against systems. That's what leadership is for. And that's what a political party can do that an amorphous movement cannot. That's what Kwame Ture meant when he said, I don't just want people to come out and vote every 4 years. That's the height of bourgeois irresponsibility. He said, I know that the vote is just a tool to organize my people. That's why y'all are here. That's why we made this a campaign event rather than a revolutionary learning community event, because what comes next is we need the political application. We need to build the organizational strength that will actually acquire power. Without the power, it is all talk. And the power does not come without the organization. All of the mobilization in the world will go for nothing, nothing. And I know y'all hate to hear that. I hate to say it because I love a good march as much as anybody. And I'm often asked to speak at those marches. And I try to deliver in each and every one of those instances because I believe in it, and it's good to find our people. I'm not saying that there's no use in marches. There is something to be done there, but that is not the work. What Kwame Ture said is he said Dr. King was a great mobilizer, terrible organizer. He said Malcolm was a great mobilizer and a great organizer. Everywhere Malcolm went, he left a mosque when he was a minister. Everywhere Malcolm went, he left an institution. That's why he was so terrifying. That's why they took him out, because he was also breaking out of the racial mold of the Nation of Islam and making a universal argument. He was making an international argument, saying that the United States need to be brought before the United Nations for violation of the human rights of its African descended population. He made that same connection that the Panthers then took and ran, that in the local ethnic struggle inside the United States of America is connected to the international struggle. And if it stays just contained in that ethnic bubble, it can be easily neutralized. But once it is this kind of gathering, once it is this kind of rainbow coalition where we got every color in the rainbow and also rainbow flags, that's the kind of coalition that they can't do nothing about. That's the kind of coalition that they can't stop. So the call coming forward out of this gathering is, and listen, I know that many of y'all donated when you signed up for this, but somebody put the link in the chat, donate again, because we are going to need to create the institutional structures that are going to allow us to build effective organization. And here's the thing, y'all, I hate to say it, but if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Nobody is taking on this task of building an actual opposition party. So we have to do it. I had this conversation with my wife this morning. You guys do not know how badly I don't want to do this. Some of you do. Shayla might know. A few of the people that have been in the spiritual intensives for 5 years might know that I don't want to do this. But we're called to do this. in this moment because we have to build something that is going to protect people. We have to build something that is actually going to provide for people's defense. We have to be that armed sentinel that keeps harm from needlessly reaching people. And that means political organizing. That can't be done on a volunteer basis. Yeah, we're up to 500 volunteers now that, and I see a lot of y'all on the screen that are volunteers. But the thing is that the people that have been volunteers and that have been doing the work of building organizational units for the last 4 months that we've had the campaign, those people now need to be hired as field operations leaders so that they can bring in the next 500 volunteers just from their local region. As long as things are moving just on a volunteer basis, as long as we're constantly lacking resources, then we cannot scale up. So people need to put their money where their mouth is. If you are people of means, if you have access to rooms that are people of means, then create an opportunity for me to come and make the case in a speaking engagement. When I come and do Green Party house parties, oftentimes if you can just get stakeholders with resources into the room, I can come in and make that case, and we can raise 40, 50K, 80K right there on the spot. We did it all the time during the Steinware campaign. You set it up, I promise to close it. But we are going to need the resources in order to scale this up. And that means that people are going to have to not just put their money where their mouth is, but it means that they're also going to have to leverage their relationships, leverage the positions that they're in order to open new doors so this movement can grow. And even if you're not based in California, you can be a crucial part of this. We've had fundraisers in Texas and Minnesota, especially in the Muslim community, because the Muslim community has already opted off of the Democrat plantation. So now they're supporting this wherever they are in the country. But why can't the leftists be doing that too? Because if we get to second place in that primary on June 2nd of 2026, the duopoly's dead. We're going to have to seriously up security after that election, because I guarantee you on my daddy's grave, they are going to come for me the same way that they came for Fred and Malcolm. Because they know how fragile it is. They know that all it takes is the people to be awakened to the fact that we are all being oppressed and exploited by the same system. And it don't matter about is this color or this color. They're coming for us all. They're extracting from us all. I want Dr. Ware to have security now. Don't worry, I got shooters in every city. Just understand that. Like, don't don't think for a second that we don't. But yeah, we're definitely going to need to up the security. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, Dr. Ware. Just a quick question. I've actually followed you before, Joe, and you teamed up. I discovered you because of Mark and Greg's Colonial Outcast. So, having said that, I know Democracy Now! You had to troll them to get on. Have you considered, and I write and donate so I can maybe have a little bit of pull, I don't know. Electronic Intifada, Aliyah Bumina is amazing. Nora Barrows Freeman is from California. I don't know if she still resides there, but she's from the Bay Area. And then the Gray Zone, Glenn Greenwald, all these other like alternate medias where the most of us live in, right? We don't live in MSNBC or any of that. So just wanting to know.
We quite literally, we've gotten invited on things just because we organize people that follow on social media to blast, folks with mentions. There's all kind of different ways that if we start to utilize our energy in an organized fashion in order to create new organizing opportunities, that we can burst through a lot of those walls. So without any question, and Nora, our events coordinator, is on the call. We've got some of our volunteers and other campaign staff that are on the call as well. But literally every single last person in this room should be thinking about how we can leverage whatever access we have in order to build the kernel of this political organization that we're going to need. Because the thing is, and nobody, listen, I'm deathly afraid that Zoran's going to sell out, and I pray to God that he won't. But the one thing that we know for sure is that no one can now say that you can't do it.
Yeah.
No, that was always an absurd argument, but it has been uh, rendered irrelevant because it's demonstrably false. It's demonstrably false. The people are ready for it. The people are waiting for it. You absolutely can do it. Yeah, Chris. One here's Zoran did it as a Democrat, not as a Green. It's true. He did it. He didn't do it as a Democrat. He did it as DSA, which is it's a it's a loophole, right? You get to pretend that you're not part of the system while being part of the system. And you get a lot of the benefits that come from running with a D next to your name, which is essentially you don't cause people to have to make the epistemological rupture with the system as it exists. So you get to be both inside it and outside it. And then once you're in, we find out what you're actually about. But just to be clear, like I've seen this happen in real life. Jesse Ventura ran as an independent candidate for governor in the state of Minnesota. That's my second hometown. I saw it happen. I saw it happen. And he's not a tenth of the candidate that I am. Sorry if that came across as cocky, but it's just that's accurate. Like in terms of the ability to think and speak in full sentences, Jesse Ventura cannot compare. We can absolutely do this from outside of the duopoly, but we're not going to have the advantages of a D next to our name, which means we're going to have to work, as we were taught back home, twice as hard to go half as far. Black folks in the room will hear the sound of that and understand what that means. We're going to have to do double the work to get half the distance. So that means that like everybody is going to have to leverage whatever institutional access that they have, whatever resources that they have. We are going to need soldiers in order to build this next phase of the movement. I'm gonna do something real quick. Start a stack for the last round of Q&A. But this coffee is running right through me, so I'm gonna stretch my legs. I'm gonna make sure that I mute the audio, and I'm gonna go use the restroom, and then we will come back for our closing conversation and our Q&A. So give me about 3 minutes. I'm gonna just to say two things. If you are based inside the state of California, and Fernando, I hope you feel deeply targeted by this comment. But if you're somebody that's well-spoken and charismatic, we also need you running for office. This is the reason why, one of the reasons why we made the strategic decision to make sure that we're running green rather than independent is because this is a team sport. We need teammates. If, Michael Jordan was not winning any championships until Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant came along. And if we're able to build the infrastructure that's going to allow us to get to second and therefore, because listen, give me a second, I'm gonna beat the brakes off of Kamala, I promise. Like that's easy. That's really lightweight in terms of how to handle a debate. Yeah. So that's one thing. But if we're able to get to that office, we're going to need friends in the state legislature. The deadline to run for the state legislature to register is March of 2026. I think March 3rd, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. So we've got a few months for you to think this through. That's not particularly demanding. We can add on to the campaign infrastructure to help you to support you. It's an amazing, really, really talented individual. I will not out him because he's still making his final decision as to potentially run as a lieutenant governor candidate. You guys will recognize him if and when he makes that announcement. But the point is that if you're based in California, gang gang. That's all I that's all I gotta say. We're gonna need some folks riding shotgun for protection, politically speaking. The second thing is that if is that we have to play a game of spades in this room right now. And I know that that's a very specific cultural reference. I'm sorry for this, but spades is a game where you bid how many books you think that you can get, and you bid with a partner. So if I'm playing and my partner is Joshua, I'm just gonna pick out the first black person I see on my screen because I know that not many other people are gonna know how to play spades. Then I'm gonna, say I got four and two possibles, and he's gonna say I got two and three possibles, and we're gonna bid together maybe 7 or 8 books to come out of that particular hand. I need everybody right now to be thinking about how many people and they can promise to bring to the next meeting that we have on screen, and how many possibles they got. You need to be thinking about a bid and put it in the chat. I got two people that I can for sure bring to the next meeting, and I got three possibles. Because when I say leverage our relationships, is that so we had almost 600 people register for this call. A lot of people are watching the videos after the fact. Some people could only attend one day or the other day, and we've had up to 170 people on the Zoom. We need to break the Zoom the next time. We need to go from 600 people registered to 1,200 people registered. We need to go from 180 people in the room to 500 people in the room. We have to grow it. And that means that y'all have to grow it. You have to reach out into your personal networks, and you have to call people in on this. Leverage what you have to leverage. Somebody said they got five possible. Good. Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky. I understand who somebody said in the chat they just deleted Meta. Appeal to people in real life, reach out through your social networks, but start to think about how many people you can get to the next meeting. Go ahead, Shen.
Assalamualaikum, Professor, and good afternoon to everybody. It's my second day, and this is going to be a long one. My apologies, and you can stop me anytime, Professor. Mine is not a question, but more of an observation from my own personal experience. For anybody and everybody here, if you wish to be part of a revolution, you have to first recognize which demons you're under control or you are a slave to. It is not just one demon, it could be colonization, colorism, misogyny, racism, all of these things. Every one of us is a prisoner of it. And until we can break our shackles of each and every one of them, we will not be any amount of revolutionary by any means. And I say this to come to my second example. I do martial arts on the regular. I do jujitsu regularly, and for anybody who's Muslim and a Muslim woman, you know that it's hard to find those classes because generally we would prefer a female teacher, but we have one over here in Dallas. We're very fortunate. And I encourage all women to take martial arts because being a woman, no matter what your color, race, background, is always dangerous. And especially if you're doing revolutionary work, you should always be prepared to fight. And I try to bring other women into self-defense. And the biggest resistance I get is the fact that a lot of them are unwilling to fight back. Because we have been taught as women that good women, feminine women, don't fight back. That is not a part of our programming. And most women are so afraid to really push back against that. But as somebody who has been in the revolutionary space for a very long time, I can tell you that being willing to really have resistance weapons, that'd be self-defense, knowledge, breaking all of the prisons that you exist under, is incredibly important. And it requires us to be uncomfortable. And if we're not uncomfortable, we're not resisting. And second thing is, you'd be surprised. I asked this question to all women, and I asked the same question to all the women here. How many of you carry a mace at all times? I carry a mace at all times. I'm in my home right now, but I carry a mace at all times. It is because it is that integral for us to defend ourselves in order to be a part of the revolution. And unless we are willing to take the steps to free ourselves from our prisons, there ain't going to be no revolutions. And that's the end of it. I promise.
I mean, no notes. Uh, all power to the people. You brought us back to where we started. You know, it's an individual responsibility incumbent upon every last one of us. The first spiritual intensives that I did in the Muslim community, you know, we framed this in terms of thinking about, you know, what traditions tell us about the end of days. And the end of days are going to be filled with tribulations and difficulties. Are you going to be someone that needs protection, or are you going to be someone that can help protect others? So just take that as a matter of personal responsibility, and thank you for checking in with us, Shayla. Thank you for always, you know, checking in with us. We appreciate you. I got Drew's hand next in the line.
Hi, some battery on my phone to check, but first of all, thank you for the seminar today. I just heard about it yesterday and was very inspired. Just love the energy here today.
Welcome in,
And
man.
yeah,
Welcome in.
thank you. Um, yeah, and I'm born and raised in California. I've been here a long time, and I've been kind of in and out of different parties. So my question is just about that. I wanted to ask you a very general question about how you think this campaign could relate to ongoing efforts to form new parties by, there's the Revolutionary Communists of America, there's PSL, there's other parties that I don't think deserve to be mentioned, but because I think there's good people in those two parties, but and there's a lot of others that I don't want to list all of them, but there's just so many efforts right now. People know that we need a party instrument. And I want to know, because you've spoken so candidly about so much of that history today, like how you see the campaign relating to those ongoing efforts, because I know a lot of people that are going to be very excited by the rhetoric and then very worried by the green side of things, because
Yep.
the Green Party in California has a very varied reputation, just to be frank about it. Like there's been a
Of
lot of
course.
racism allowed in the party.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my question.
It's an excellent question and a tremendous opportunity. So, just for background, after the presidential campaign finished, I had a meeting with the National Steering Committee, and I told them that there were five things that they're going to need to do. The last and most important was welcome demographic change inside the party. That the party has been dominated by aging white environmentalists, and unless and until they make room for all of the revolutionary energy that's specifically coming out of the Free Palestine movement, that there isn't a future for the Green Party. And I, I'm happily and proudly, you know, rocking the endorsement of the California Green Party. I'm looking at Nassim and other folks from from CA Greens at various levels and various chapters who have been supportive. But all of us that have chosen to try to shape the Green Party into an effective weapon for liberation and resistance are intimately aware of its shortcomings and failings. No illusions about that. the My response is that whoever sets the pace for a truly independent, non-corporate, leftist political party movement, whoever wins first will define the terms. Everyone else will run to catch up. And when people were talking about, you know, tensions with PSL or Dr. West, I mean, Dr. West, you know, like literally he called me, you know, a couple weeks ago. Melina Abdullah, somebody that I've known from the Black Muslim community for years. But I made a post during the presidential campaign that said people do not just abandon political parties that they've been working on and join coalitions until you show them why they should. The expression is usually in English butchered. People usually say the proof is in the pudding, but that's actually not the English expression. The original English expression is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that one hits different because when people can taste it and it nourishes them and sustains them, then they know it's real. And until we build it, I do not expect anybody to put down what their hand is holding and to join with what we're doing. I don't. In Wolof, they say that the child of Adam does not release what their hand is holding until they're reaching for something better. So the reason why we started this campaign, and we started this campaign early, is to set a pace and to build an organizational infrastructure and to actually start to undertake the effort of putting on the ground in California, the wealthiest and most populous state in the union, a Green Party mechanism that can absorb. And by the way, many of our most significant like organizers at the ground level have been DSA people, have been PSL people, have been folks that might have other party affiliations, but they're working for this campaign. A lot of them, and I mean, this is something that's really special. A lot of our like core organizers are anarchists. And if you can get an anarchist to support you for an electoral politics campaign, then you must be doing something right. That's all I can say, about that. So my answer to, Drew is I could not agree with you more that what we need to do is to show up and to do the work and to build it. And I don't think that there's any rhetoric. There are no set of words that are going to, to change either the perception or the reality. Actions will change the perception and the reality. And actually, that's the last thing that was in my notes about principle and practice. True revolutionary practice is rooted in the past, but it's also improvisational. It's like jazz. You master certain core riffs so that you can improvise new sounds. The Haitian Revolution did not start out necessarily with the aim of creating the first free Black republic in the Western Hemisphere. The activities of building the revolution radicalized the movement further and further until it did things that were unimaginable before the process started. So, being a student of those successful revolutionary movements, I know that if we root ourselves in these time-honored principles and lessons, and then have the audacity to innovate and to respond to the new circumstances, that what we will create will actually be unprecedented. Nassim.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who's here. I'm so inspired. We started this couple of hours with tears of sorrow and joy, and I'm really happy to end it with even more joy and more connections, more solidarity, and I want to thank Drew for bringing that issue up because I am so inspired by Dr. Ware really pushing the concept of it is not enough to mobilize, you must organize. And the reason I work with the Green Party and I've spent 8 years helping trying to build it is because I see the Green Party as one of the best paths to organizing because of our national ballot strategy. But I also remind people that we are a people's party. We are volunteers. So when we have failures, it just reflects that we need more people. We need people to care about the back end scut work that's not exciting, that's not so glorifying. It may not be immediate gratification. It's just the process of building. And that's what all the states are going through that have green parties and the battle for ballot access. Because when Butch is tired of being our governor, I want him to run for president. And I want a national ticket. I want his name on a national ticket for years. And how do we do that? I want half of you to run, and end up there. So we need a national ballot strategy. And I don't see any other independent grassroots party even attempting that. So I hope that they are. I hope that eventually we'll reach and coalesce in one area. So that's just my feeling. I wanted to have a quick question. Thank you for the homework, Butch. I've read, I dived into housing, was so exciting and learned a lot about how hyper-focused the Panthers were on local issues. They pounded their local politicians. They held them accountable, held their feet to the fire. That's fantastic. And that was something I hadn't realized. I knew they were big critics, but I hadn't realized how vocal they were and how much they ended up trying to work with local politicians. So I appreciate that. And I wanted to ask a quick question
Yeah.
from you about Cooperation Jackson. People continue to ask, how does this happen? How do you implement it? I know that Cooperation Jackson doesn't cover the breadth and width of what the Black Panthers plan was, but what they're doing in terms of democratizing their local economies and building a solidarity economy, worker-owned cooperatives, and it made me think about the land banking
Yep.
section of the Black Panther plan. So wondering if you are connected with them or you're interested in featuring some of their work, or how does the solidarity economy enter the kind of work that we could be doing as volunteers on the ground?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the greatest contemporary iterations of that organizing, and especially like self-reproducing and sustainability models that we currently have. I don't have connections. Anybody that would connect me, I would cherish the opportunity to engage. There's a group in Seattle before I was ever called into the campaign, a Muslim group called Wasat, where we started something there called Economic Underground Railroad, which was basically trying to thread together a bunch of cooperatives, pro-Palestinian businesses, indigenous and black-owned businesses into a kind of economic solidarity network. And one of the reasons why, in addition to the campaign, we created a 501(c)(3) and a 501(c)(4) is that some of those activities are not, properly speaking, campaign related activities, but I want to be able to aggregate funds so that we can help support those kind of efforts. So absolutely, and it gives me an opportunity to just say one last thing about the kind of broader philosophical rooting of the campaign. The vision, again, mutual aid, direct action, electoral politics, in that order, right? That the electoral politics is the tip of the iceberg, but what makes the iceberg dangerous is all the part that's beneath the surface. And the mutual aid and the direct action is the part that's beneath the surface. And with, I just want to be clear about this. Like, the reason why I'm asking people to message me, about the rapid response and resistance orgs through our secure revolutionary community is because there's parts of this resistance that can be above ground, like Cooperation Jackson, and then there's parts of this resistance that have to be below ground, where a candidate that's running for office needs plausible deniability. Um, and I'm going to leave things at that. So all of the connections that we can make with the people that are doing the work on the ground and everything that we can learn from them. Go back to the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution was successful because it brought in literally dozens of different military regiments that were formed according to African ethnic lines. And they came together and through ritual practice made sacred alliances. They didn't stop being who they were. They just all agreed to work towards a collective aim. And that collective aim was put within reach through their bringing together of their collective forces. So everybody that's doing the work on the ground, I'm going to show up in humble service to you doing the work on the ground. You tell me how I can best be of service. And once you think that we've sufficiently provided benefit, then join with us. I didn't want to mess up the pronunciation of your name. Is it just Alphon?
Yes, yeah, you got it. All
Okay,
right,
cool.
thank you. First off, I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity to come here and to learn and to also to get connected with all the different grassroots and stuff. I'm not located in California, so unfortunately, a lot of that's not necessarily applicable. I was there. First off, was there anything like closer to Maryland? If there's stuff that like people can link in the chat, that would
Excellent.
be useful for me. But my question was specifically, I think you kind of answered it a little bit in like the proof of the pudding is in the eating kind of.
Yep.
In that I see a lot of these not just online, but like in my own personal life, at school, at work, with my family and whatnot. A lot of apathy, and also a lot of fear in terms of not only speaking out, but like just caring about like this state of which the United States is heading. It's like, what can we do about it, right? And it's understandable that they're not going to see that until like we have the like we try and build those safety nets for them. But I'm just wondering if you had any insights on how we communicate to them in the meantime of these of building these systems.
Yeah. Excellent, and thank you for joining us. So the first thing I would say, if you're on Instagram, follow Davon Love. His Instagram handle is West Baltimore Love. He's been very active with Green Party organizing, reparations advocacy. Brilliant brother who's doing the work and is close to you. Our sister Lateria Bailey, also young, black, and aware. She's based in Maryland. And actually, Andy Ellis is running as a Green Party candidate in the state of Maryland. So you can also kind of support and help provide visibility. Andy is also running our reparations platform. So there's stuff that you can do to get active locally. That's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is, um, uh, good luck getting me to try to run for president. But one way or the other, the aim is to try to build a national political organization. The most effective way of channeling the momentum from the vice presidential campaign into a national movement was by running in California in 2026. But the aim and scope of our organizing is nationwide. And that is, I agree with Nassim fully, the reason why the Green Party is the most dangerous weapon to the duopoly. The Green Party is the most dangerous weapon to the duopoly because it has the best ballot access and because it has the greatest national reach in terms of what it can be shaped into. So, yes, you can volunteer for the campaign here on the West Coast. Probably half of our volunteers are not based in California. You can do phone banking, you can do online stuff. There's all kinds of remote work that you can do specifically for this campaign, but you can also be part of doing the work in your own area and building up the infrastructure for later runs in 26 and 28. Like this is um, we're laying a foundational cornerstone with this particular campaign in California, but there's a lot of other construction that needs to be built. So get in where you fit in. And then the last part of your question, it's difficult because we have been conditioned through the most extensive campaign of surveillance and propaganda ever to exist in human history to believe that we have no other options than blue or red genocide. Nobody, no generation, no society has ever had, this kind of access to people's inner lives. Um, Corporations have never had such complete control over our social media environment, our media environment, our political environment. They own it all. So you have to approach it like deprogramming cult members, or offering a lifeline to a loved one who is in an abusive relationship. Like that is the disposition to take. You're dealing with people who have had their self-esteem and their self-worth broken down to the point that they will literally scream at the top of their lungs that people that drown in a flood in Texas got what was coming to them because of who they voted for. And think that they're the good guys because they're liberals and Democrats. And if you just think about that for a second, you realize like the entire society is suffering from a massive brain disease. So when you're deprogramming cult members or talking to, abused relatives, like be patient, be persistent, be consistent. Sometimes, yeah, you might have to use a sharp word, but you're usually going to get more flies with honey than you get with vinegar, like they used to say back home, right? That, remind people about how to get their needs met, find people where they are. I mentioned this yesterday when talking about deprogramming libs, is to just engage them on the ground of the things that matter most, especially for Black folks who have been conditioned to vote Democrat for a long time. You know, what have the Democrats done for us? How come they won't stand up for reparations? How come they keep building bigger and better prisons? How come the people that they keep telling us stand for us are doing the exact opposite of what Malcolm said to do? They're doing the exact opposite of what James Baldwin said, right? We can appeal to to the pantheons of Black liberation thinking, but just try to find the weakness, the place where they're most vulnerable to an appeal, and that then can be a wedge into a broader piece. But it can be very difficult, and as I said yesterday, it's harder to deprogram Blue MAGA than it is original recipe, because there's a kind of there's a moral superiority complex and a kind of delusional morality that is like deeply embedded in liberalism that's really, really hard for people. It's just hard for people to think that they're not the good guys. And that's it's tough to get people off of that. Um, so this session, just I'm looking at the time, we're past time. Um, I want to thank everybody for making the time. I'm going to give one kind of additional homework assignment for everybody that's here. For everybody that's here, please, if you haven't already, join Revolutionary Learning Community. Join Revolutionary Learning Community. It's a place where we have secure communications, and there's different groups that you can participate in there. The more people that we get off that platform, the more things that we can do in a space that we control and that Meta does not, that Elon Musk does not. Spread the word about that. This has been, in my humble estimation, a very successful, kind of first gathering of this kind of political education exercise. So definitely we will work towards more of this. Happy to take suggestions and feedback in that space. And I want you guys, one of the things I like about Revolutionary Learning Community is that we can literally build a group of all of the people that participated here so that you can stay in touch with the people that were in the space, so that you can build your own connections laterally as well, so that we can stay connected. I've seen somebody volunteer to create a Discord group. We also have someone else that's already actually volunteered to do that as well. But let's stay connected. And if you have not already volunteered for the campaign, volunteer for the campaign. If you have not already donated to the campaign, donate to the campaign. And if you have already donated to the campaign, make it a monthly donation to the campaign. Make it a recurrent donation. This is the time now for the scaling up of our activities. We need to get our Sacramento and our Santa Ana and our San Diego and our LA County and our Orange County teams up. So we'll appreciate all the support. I'll end this the way that Malcolm ended his autobiography. Any good that came out of this was by the grace of God, and only the mistakes were mine. So I'm humbly begging your pardon for all of the things that I said that were out of place, and for all of the things that I didn't say that needed to be said. But hopefully we'll get more opportunities to continue building the kind of liberation movement that we all know that we need. So in peace and power.